All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Derek Ivory. It's been 2 months since I've been on. Obviously, you guys, I put out before that I've had a internship that I went through for about 2.5 months. And my first guest after is Israel. Israel, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Isreal Quezada and I'm excited to be here.
Just a little background. So me and Israel met through a marriage group called ReEngage at the church. It's a really nice group. If anybody never heard about it, you essentially talk about marriage, but it's from a biblical sense. Me and my wife learned a lot in that class, and we really appreciate you and your wife for taking the time to be great leaders that you were.
Yes, it was a great time. It was fun time. We get to know other couples, and during that time, I mean, it's a 6 month. It's basically a whole semester. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we meet once a week, and we had a great time meeting other couples and sharing what's working for us, what's not working. And
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend this course. It's a very, very good course that very few churches offer, unfortunately. And
Mm-hmm.
we love for more people to join and other churches to join.
Yeah, I like it. Like I said, we really, really learned a lot. So I tell you what, we'll dive right into it. The first thing I want to ask you is essentially, I know you're a very, very religious man, and my podcast is centered around leadership. And most of my question to you will be about leadership and faith and things like that. So I guess the first question I would like to ask you is essentially, how do you feel like your faith in Christ has shaped your leadership in your marriage or your everyday life?
Well, faith is one of those things that carries on anything you do. Basically, it's a daily thing that goes with you wherever you go. You try not to separate faith from your daily activities. Everything you do is based on your faith principles, what you believe is right, and what God teaches you to do. In every
Mm-hmm.
that I think faith has basically shaped every aspect of business, every aspect of the way things run in the family, the
Mm-hmm.
things runs with other people, the way you interact with other people. You learn a lot through following your faith. It really guides you to a better place all the time.
Mm-hmm.
By simply following what the Word of God says, your faith really will shape the way you do business. And when you don't follow your faith, you definitely would have some issues. You
All
will
right.
definitely be affected in some way.
Okay. I know we spoke about this in the re-engaged, right? But I would like for you to share a time where your prayer, your faith, or the power of scripture helped you through like a very, very difficult.
Well, a couple of years ago, we were struggling financially so much, and we were going through very difficult times where we were so behind in our mortgage payments. We were behind in our vehicles, credit cards, anything we had. We were just struggling financially so much. It was just difficult times. And then during 2008, the mortgage industry collapsed, and I was part of that. I was a loan officer at the time. Our company had to shut down. And then I went to work for a local bank, actually a national bank. And that bank also shut its doors, the mortgage department, to our area when we used to have 15, 20 loan officers to basically they started letting go one by one. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the last one they let go of. We struggled so much. And during those times, I got very stressed out. I was having a difficult time adjusting to an everyday looking for a job. I remember getting desperate. And my wife once told me, "Have God ever left you behind? Have God ever forsaken you?" And I paused for a second. I remember thinking about it. And I started thinking about all the years that had passed. And I said, no, no.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he said, well, what makes you think he will do it now? And that was,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he won't, and we're still
Yeah.
here. So obviously we
I,
survived.
I know that we talked about that before. We had like an in-depth conversation over coffee one morning, and I know I kind of explained to you, not that it was an excuse, but like a lot of people look at the role as a man, right? And a man, from what I was taught, should provide. And I think that for the most part, we kind of worry about how we're going to provide for our family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I gave you the example of if you see two people on the side of the road, husband and a wife, nobody in their right mind is going to say, man, it's a shame the wife let her husband, her family, get put out on the street. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it's kind of ingrained, especially in like a cultural aspect for men to provide. And, I spoke to my wife about that too. I have confidence in myself, but my wife would always tell me, "Hey, you shouldn't really worry about, getting hired once you get out of the military because I think you'll be a great candidate for anybody." I'm like, "Yeah, but I still want to do this." And she was like, "Yeah, but just don't worry about it." And she essentially told me that same thing. She was like, "Hey, you should just have more faith, you know." And I think that once you have that conversation, that you come to the realization that uh, that you are, you know, protected and provided for, regardless of what your circumstances are, then it puts you at ease a little bit. And I do appreciate that.
Yes, and it can be challenging. Sometimes you're looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
You're
Mm,
looking at your statements. You're looking at
yeah.
all
Yeah.
the bills that are coming, by mail or now,
Like you said.
right?
Hmm.
You're staring at all these accounts and you feel like, oh wow, like the numbers don't add up, so
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
that
constantly, I've been blessed to make a good living, but I'm constantly looking at the account like, man, we got this due, we got this due, we got this due. And my wife was always saying, "Oh, you're always worried about bills." And I was like, "Yeah, because I don't want to be homeless." And she was like, "There, we're not going to be homeless." I was like, "Yeah, but I don't feel that way. Like, I want to make sure that I provide."
of course,
Yeah.
we probably wanted to work, but basically.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mentioned at the top of the podcast that, I met you through the ReEngage classes. Me and my wife, since we've taken the classes, have had a different perspective on how marriage is and how we look at each other. And marriage from a biblical standpoint is completely different than what I thought prior to me getting to the class. But I have a question for you. As a Christian, as a servant leader, what type of role do you play in the re-engage?
We're basically moderators in every semester. We get us
Mm-hmm.
in 4, 5, sometimes even 6 couples, and then we are gonna have that class with them for the next 6 months, right? So basically, our purpose in that class is not to teach anyone, but for us to follow the book and the instructions
Mm-hmm.
of the book and open conversations. Basically, be the initiators of conversations that husband and wives had at home.
Right.
So at no moment we are saying we have taken this class before. We know what happens. We know all the do's and don'ts. Definitely not. Every session we learn a lot, and every couple is different. Every
Yeah.
couple is very unique. Let's say every couple has its own personality and
All right.
different struggles or different wins. So every couple has done some things that they're great at doing things together, and our couples have struggled in some other areas. Same way my spouse and I still have our challenges in certain areas and disagreements, which is, I think at the end of the day, it's good.
Right.
When everybody agrees on any topic, in a couple, that means it's concerning. I mean, there's something wrong, even though it sounds perfect. That means there's something off here.
Yeah. I've always heard that where there's no conflict, there is no growth.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes a big difference.
Okay. Well, another question I want to ask you, and it's in reference to you as being a class leader. Have you had any like aha moments, for instance? Not that I don't know. I know that you don't think that your marriage is perfect, but I'm pretty sure you've had a couple that came through and you've learned something from them. Now you don't have to single out the couple. Could you share something that you've learned that like significantly improved your marriage or your relationship with your wife or
Yes, something that really impacted us, in our first years.
mm-hmm.
It was that the class was very revealing to us. For
Mm,
example, there was stuff that we just didn't know that we didn't know. It seems like we were just blindfolded. We got married.
mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, most couples get married and they had a 15, 20, 30 minute talk with the pastor who's going to marry them, or
Uh-huh.
and obviously judges don't do that when they're married. You know,
Right.
to give you a class and say, okay, this is what marriage is gonna be like. This is what you suspect. It's interesting. People go to college to prepare themselves for 4, 6, 8 years to get a doctorate degree on whatever subject they're gonna study, whatever career they're gonna take, and we don't do that in marriage. How long
Right.
are you gonna be a doctor? The rest of your life. Until age 65, 70. But how long are you going to be married?
Yeah.
We really don't take that in consideration. Basically, for some reason, we assume that we know just from the examples that we had from our parents, and
Right.
obviously sometimes they're not the best,
This is true.
and we jump into marriage thinking that, oh, I can do this. When sometimes I don't even know what I want. I don't,
Yeah.
and I expect the other person
Yeah.
to know what I want, So,
Yeah.
um, basically, it was very revealing. A lot of things were
Yeah.
covered that we just didn't know that were there that we needed to talk about. And once those things happened, we started seeing some growth. We started
Yeah.
seeing a lot of changes in our marriage, definitely.
Yeah. I think that's great. And just like you said, we don't always have the best example growing up of like what a husband is supposed to be or what a mother is or a wife is supposed to be. And, a lot of examples we get could be from, people we see, society, or, it could be like TV show. Like, I think I shared this with you before, but I always thought that my life was supposed to be like the Cosby Show. Right.
Yes.
Like it was one of my best shows growing up. I was like, I'm gonna be a successful husband and my wife is gonna be successful. We're gonna have kids and we're gonna have fun and sing and dance and do all this stuff. But it doesn't kind of give you a glimpse of what goes on behind the scene. In marriage, what I found out like in marriage, you're taking two different people, two different backgrounds, two different upbringings, and you put them together and you say, figure it out. And
Yeah.
just like you were saying, we didn't go to a class on how to be a good husband or for women how to be a good wife. So it makes sense when you say that, we don't have the experience. And you agree, and you said something, and I agree with you. When you're talking about the podcast, when you talk about the leadership class, that you had to re-engage, it makes sense for us to, kind of take the class before you get married. You can kind of work those things out. And essentially you might have to say, well, hold on, man, I need to pump the brakes a little bit. Maybe I'm not ready or vice versa. You know, that makes complete sense.
Yes, there's actually a course called Merge.
Mm,
And that course is before marriage. Your
uh-huh.
merge. And the purpose of that is that same thing. You take the course for several weeks. And some couples have actually canceled the wedding.
Right.
Yeah, they have come to the conclusion, okay, this is really not for us, or
Yeah.
not the right person. So after taking that class, they realized, you know what, I just saved myself $40,000 wedding plus
Hmm.
so many years of headache. So
Yeah, that's
which
true.
which is the right thing to do, for us to get
Yeah.
informed as possible, uh, of what expectations that we have in marriage, or what is really marriage like. Not like everything gets portrayed in Mexico
Movies and
novelas and
TV.
movies. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Can you explain what do you do now as like for employment?
I'm an insurance agent. Been with the company for 14 years now, and
Mhm.
we were doing the same several years before that, prior to being a loan officer for so many years. So we decided to start doing the insurance business, and we've been doing that for several years now. We love it. Basically, one of the reasons why we love what we do is because we feel very confident that we don't sell a product. It's something that everybody needs, and we're very honest when it comes to the way we deal business. If it's not good for somebody, they already have a good policy, we'll definitely tell them, you know what, this is a good policy. I wouldn't change. I'm losing a customer, but I want to gain a friend. So, and all the same time, it offers us a platform for us to be able to share with so many people, not just the insurance part, but for us to be able to share faith. We had so many cases. I always said that insurance agents are like bartenders, right? People come and
Yeah.
tell their life stories and you start listening to them. And it's amazing that sometimes when they come in, you know that God brought them to you for a purpose, not for you
Right.
to sell, but for you to share, hope, in their lives and speak truth to their lives, and they leave here,
Sure.
and that they left different once
Yeah.
they remember, you know what, I felt so good. What I received today was good, and you really needed to hear that. And we had a lot of people where they come with so many things in their life. They're just hurting, and we're
Mm,
able to pray for them. And my wife works with me, and at the same time, we're able to share with a lot of the women that come here. And I ask my wife, let us pray. And then she leads us in prayer. And it's been amazing. So we have seen
mm.
great stories on that. And we
Okay.
for those opportunities.
Well, speaking about like leadership and prayer and faith, how would you say that you kind of integrate your faith from a leadership perspective, your job?
Well, I think overall, when you're a person of faith, you will let them rule your life. You will treat people will respect. You will treat others not as a number, but as human beings. And yes, we definitely do have a business to run, but
Mm-hmm.
also we need to do it ethically and morally right. So
Right.
we want to make sure that we lead that way. And usually people will come back. Honestly, our retention is really good in our business. And I would say about 80% of whoever leaves us because, premium changes, increases, they will definitely come back and they will say, you know what, we come back because you always inform us so well. We learn a lot every time we come and sit with you. We learn something new, not just about insurance, but about health, about marriage, about our children. So, um, definitely trans, faith and leadership go together a lot. So
Right.
I think we have been able to share with others because they actually see us as leaders. And one thing that I have learned in leadership is leadership means influence.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
I can agree with that.
I know that there is tons of books about leadership, and
Yeah.
how to lead, how to do this, how to do that. But I feel that sometimes people don't realize that they're leaders, and leadership means influence. I got influence, maybe not at a bigger scale, but within my platform. What influence do I have? So as a dad,
Mhm.
influence. My children will be influenced by the things that I do, the things that I say, the things how they see me treat my spouse. Is going to transfer into influence. So that is leadership. And unfortunately, some people say, well, I'm not a leader. Oh, yes, you are. You,
Yeah.
you probably haven't accepted the role, right? Because
Yeah.
responsibility that it comes with. But at the end of the day, as a dad, you're definitely uh, uh, a leader, right? And it's interesting because now one of the in the latest years, one of the things that has grown the most is influencers, right? There's so many people on social media being influencers, and they say, well, basically what they're saying is, I'm a leader, and they're leaders because there are people following them, and from the
Yep.
moment somebody follows you, that means you got influence on that person. Somehow you're putting an egg and lemon and whatever on your face because you thought somebody said it is
Right.
fine. So that is the influence.
I never thought about it like that. Me and my wife were talking the other day. I want to say it was one day she was off work, and I told her, I was like, I said social media is nice. I said, but I kind of wish that everybody wouldn't take it so seriously. And she was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Man, you got people that get up in the morning time and they're waking up out of bed, they're stretching, fixing some coffee, then they're going to work and they're exercising, and they're trying to tell you how nice of a life they have, or how you should raise your kids, or how you and your wife should get along. But when you think about it, like I said to my wife, I was like, who's holding the camera when the when they wake up in the morning time?" And
Right.
I think especially for like the younger generation, they look at it and they can't help but to compare their life to what they see on social media. So like you were saying, if you are on social media, you have followers, and you have to be careful of the contents you put out because it can influence people in
Yeah.
a negative way.
Yeah.
So I do agree with that.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I know you mentioned your family. Do you see any overlap in your leadership style from what you do in the office to what you do at home that influences your kids?
Yes, yes, in a way, just because again, the way we treat others, the way we deal with business, the way we talk to customers, our kids really know everything that happens with us at work.
Mhm.
One thing that we have always been very clear is I know everybody parents differently, right? And
Yes.
one thing that happens in our home is we have always told our kids how we are doing. If we're struggling in business, or we're having one difficult month, or sometimes we go through seasons where we're more stressed out than others. And if my wife is stressed out because X, Y, and Z, I make sure
Right.
that I let the kids know, guys, be patient with your mother.
Yeah.
She's going through a difficult time. She's adjusting. She hasn't slept well. She is going through X, Y, and Z, or she started her own business and she's struggling a little bit right now. They need to know what's happening. They need to know what's happening at work.
Right.
Sometimes we have the tendency to shelter them and tell them, oh no, everything is right. You're not being real
Right.
with your kids. And when you're not being real with your kids, they will not learn from the first person, that how the world really is and how the world
Oh yeah.
works.
That makes complete sense. I never thought about it like that. That's a really good perspective.
Yes, we have met a lot of couples where they haven't shared with their children. You know what? Hey guys, for example, we got this practice every night we gather before we go to bed. All of us gather in our bed and we pray. Sometimes even the dog is there. So we're just
Mm.
like, okay, we're going to pray, right?
Yeah.
And we go over a couple of things. Tell me what you're thankful for. So in few words, and everybody goes around. And
Mhm.
sometimes they can repeat, those things over and over. That's fine. We just want them to remember what they're thankful for. Another thing is, what do you want us to pray for? And then now they press, well, I want you to pray for this. I want you to pray for that. We do that every night. And when we have those practices and during that time, that's when we share with them. Okay, guys, we had a difficult day today. We're expecting to do so much. It didn't get accomplished. So we need you to help us pray.
Mhm.
So when you make them part of the family struggle, not just the family wins, it makes it more real for them to know,
Yeah.
okay, this Christmas is going to be a little tight, or, we're going to have a great Christmas. So letting them know really makes a more real perspective of the world. And when you don't, basically, your kids are already are gonna be shocked once they hit the real world. They realize that not everything happens the way they think it is. I have a 10-year-old and it seems like he's the one that struggles the most adapting to things, right? Like he's playing volleyball, and if the ball doesn't come to him and somebody else gets it, he gets upset. And he is making a fit about how come I didn't hit the ball. And we tell him,
Yeah.
well, you have to chase the ball. The ball's not gonna come to you. See,
Yeah. It's
it
true.
goes to you. What do you need to do? What do you need to do to get things done? Position yourself where the ball is gonna land. Those peg things to come to you. The ball's not gonna come to you all the time. So having those adjustments, those conversations with them, letting them know what kind of work we do,
Mhm.
and of course they also get to see. You know what? I'm so blessed because Dad is able to come to every rehearsal that I have, every
Yeah.
baseball game. They realize that okay, this is a good thing. My dad has a good job. He's blessed by having a good job, and he's able to do those things for us as well.
Yeah. I think that's good. I think that I think it's always positive to have some level of transparency between your kids and your parents, right? I was listening to, I don't know if it was another podcast I was listening to or a book, or maybe it was an article that I was reading. And they were saying in the unfortunate event when parents do get divorced, when you have parents that argue a lot, right, in front of the kids and they end up getting divorced, the kids are like, okay, well, I kind of saw that coming, right? But then when you have parents who don't argue in front of the kids, but they have kind of this passive aggressive behavior where they don't like speak to each other, they don't kiss each other goodbye, they don't say things like good morning or good night or I love you. What happens is as soon as the kids become adults, the parents end up splitting.
Hidden.
Yep. And the kid in turn begins to have this kind of mentality where like, oh man, that came out of left field. I did not see that coming. Right. Which makes them kind of cautious about who they decide they're going to be married to in the long run. Because in their mind, they feel like, man, I thought my mom and dad were good and they end up getting divorced. So can I like really trust anybody? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So I think that it's good to have a little bit of transparency between, yourself and your kids, of course with limitations, but just like you said, you don't have to tell it your kids like, oh, well, your mom is behind $50,000 in debt. You can say, hey, your mom is struggling with something a little bit, and I want you guys to kind of be patient with her,
Yeah.
understand that, she may not be, there for you 100%. Just lean on me a little bit and not your mom. So I think that makes perfect sense.
And you know what? I will take an extra step. For example, we had a scenario just a couple of days ago where I got upset for some reason. And then my wife had said something to me that got me upset, right?
Hmm.
And then we talk about it during prayer time. The kids noticed that before during the day we were a little cool with each other. We were just not, like so it's my and oh yeah, her hugging kisses all the time, right? And then she during prayer time she says, hey guys, I want to apologize to you all because I was very quiet today, and that's because I was upset. And now that I think about it, your dad was upset too, but he was upset for the right reason. And I think what I said
Hmm.
was wrong. So I want to apologize to your dad for the way I overreacted when it wasn't necessary. You said what you thought, and I didn't take it very well. So when the kids see that, and she approaches me and she gives me a hug and a kiss and she says, I'm sorry for what I said. That's very important. Kids need to see the mom and dad not always have it right And the more transparent you are with them, the more likely they will be to forgive your mistakes when you make them,
Yeah.
instead of just pretending that everything is right.
Hey, I love that aspect. I think that being accountable is good in any profession. I remember one particular time where I don't know what it was. I said something and it was out of line. And, uh, I came to my family, like it was, well, mostly my wife and my two older kids. I said, hey man, I just want to let y'all know I'm sorry. I had a bad day. And they kind of looked at me like they didn't know what to say, you know,
Yeah.
because I guess it was kind of strange for them to hear me kind of apologize.
Hmm.
And they was just looking at me like, okay, what's got into that? My daughter asked me later and I was like, hey man, I said, sometimes as you get older, hopefully you mature and you start making better decisions. And my wife was actually the one who helped me realize that a lot of your actions affect other people. You know what I mean? So you have to be responsible. You have to be accountable. Which I think is like a great segue into my next question. When you talk about accountability, right? How do you balance grace versus accountability in not just your marriage, but whether or not it's your friendships, any kind of interpersonal relationship, what you do at work, your job, how do you balance grace and accountability? You know what I mean?
Oh, wow. One of the things that I think you have to always, this has to be part of your daily life. You
Mhm.
have to always say the truth. And if something bother you, you need to say, you know what, this really bothered. I think balance comes when we're able to get rid of things and baggage that we don't need to carry. So my wife is very transparent. She's one of those people that I'm probably a little bit more of let's think about this, let's do some reasoning. She just tells you, nope, I don't agree.
Yeah.
Straightforward. Boom. Like a straight shooter. No. And then I said, well, you know what? This is a very nice car. We should get it because it goes give us good mileage. Nope, I don't like it. But
Mhm.
you should think about it because, they last a long time. And she says, look, you want to buy it because you like it, you buy it. But you're asking me, I'm telling you, I don't like it. I'm
Mhm.
the one that lives in the car most of the day, taking kids, to each place. So it's not comfortable for me. But if you like it, you get it. So the fact that she's so upfront, it allows us to, okay, understand where she's coming from.
Right.
Be able to give her that, okay, I understand your point. Because sometimes if she was to get quiet and she said, well, yeah, it's nice. Sure, if yeah, it will be for example, this just happened to us a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
We changed vehicles, right? And she drove it. I said, so what do you think? She said, oh, drives nice. All right. So, okay, we got the vehicle.
Yeah.
Yesterday, she tells me, you know what? I don't like the car. And then I'm like, what do you mean? I don't
Yeah.
like the car. And I was like, well, you drove it. And she said, you know what? Yes, I understand. And I started noticing some things about the vehicle. And I said, you know what? Yeah, I agree with you. It's a little uncomfortable to get in. Like
Mhm.
it's not high enough. It's one of those technical issues where, it's not high enough for you to go in comfortable, but it's not low enough for you to get out. It's kind of like an in-between vehicle and it's uncomfortable. You have to basically jump out of the vehicle.
Right.
So we were having those conversations, right? So sometimes you have to extend grace by knowing, you know what? She's not always gonna get things right. She's not always gonna be, I mean, she's really good about a lot of things that she does, but it's not always gonna be the case. And
Right.
sometimes personally, I have trouble extending that grace, and
Mhm.
in that balance about, you know what? You're very good at all of this. You got this wrong. And sometimes it's really good. Sometimes we're very good about pinpointing that,
Mhm.
you did this wrong, you
Mhm.
said this, you did that, and things didn't work out because the way you approach this. And this is what we have to understand. You know what? We're not always gonna get it right. I do a lot of things right. You cannot punish me so much for one thing that I did wrong or one bad.
Right.
So that's definitely something for the books. To
Yeah. I
to
think
recover that.
I just like you were saying, I think that's a great point. I made it a point to tell my son, and I learned this from a couple of podcast episodes ago. You have the ability to tell people when they do things wrong, right?
Hmm.
But when was the last time you told somebody, "Hey, I just really appreciate you for XYZ or what you've done right?" And I agree with you from a marriage perspective, from a father perspective or a parent perspective, or even from me looking at it as my kid. Like, I don't ever want to be the person. I believe it's human nature, but I don't ever want to be the person that just always points out when somebody does something wrong. Right? I'm an avid. I wouldn't say avid book reader, but I like to listen to books. And this one book that I read was called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And one of the things that they were talking about was how to make sure you are, if you're not in a position to criticize somebody, you should know when and where you should do it. And one of the examples they gave was, let's just say you and Claudia, you guys want to go pick a restaurant. You want to go to a specific restaurant, but she wants to go to another one. The restaurant that you want to go to, she looked it up before you got there and it had bad reviews. Some people complained about the food. And you said, you know what? I really don't care. I want to go anyway. Once you got there, your food was cold. They lost your reservation. The food was bad, just like the review said it was. The wait staff was horrible. In that situation, they were asking if it was your wife, Claudia, would she be the one to say, see, I told you we shouldn't have came here? Or would she just be quiet and enjoy the evening? Right. And I mention that because that's a part of giving grace to people. Right. Not always, not every time you have to tell people that they were wrong. You know, there's always like a moment in time. And the majority of people, what they said that they were going to do is like, oh, I wouldn't say anything. I would just wait until later. And I asked my wife that, and she was like, no, I wouldn't say anything. I'm like, yeah, right. I was like, you would let me have it right there on the spot.
Yes.
You would tell me, see, I told you that's why we shouldn't have came here. We should have went to another restaurant. And I was like, I just know that you would. I was like, but they were saying having that ability to like hold back and not say, "Oh, I told you so," because the person already feels like if you're with somebody, you care about a person. Obviously, you care about their opinion and how they feel, and you want them to have a good experience. If the restaurant is horrible, the last thing they need is for someone to say to them, "Oh, well, we shouldn't have came here. See, I told you." Just pointing out even further that they were wrong. It's like essentially what you do is you should just, kind of hold your opinions to yourself, enjoy your cold pasta, and go on about your night. Try to make the best of what you have. And if the conversation comes up later, then both of you guys will understand, like, hey, we probably don't need to go to this restaurant because it wasn't too.
And you know what? Sometimes it's a matter of perspective. For example, it's interesting you mentioned that because it just happened to us 2 days ago.
Really?
Yeah, there was this restaurant. She said, "You know what? I wanted to go here." Somebody posted a review and did a video, and the food looked amazing. So we went there, and it was not lunchtime; it was after hours, so it was empty, right? So we walk in there, and service takes a while before somebody shows up. Oh, here are the menus.
Mm.
So gets our drinks and comes back, and the food, the presentation was great, but the flavor was not there.
Right.
And she was feeling bad because she had high expectancies about, all this gonna taste amazing, right? The way it looks great. So
Right.
out of, everything we had, I knew she was feeling bad. And my comment to her was, you know what? Because she said, man, I'm so disappointed. And I told her, you know what? We're not always gonna get this right. I said, maybe we should have ordered something else.
Yeah.
And then she said, you know what? You're right. I like the place. I like the restaurant. The interior looks nice. It feels comfortable. But maybe you're right. I said, you know what? We'll give it another shot. Let's remember what we ordered, so maybe we can order something. She was already feeling bad, and then I could have said, well, honestly, I was this close
Right.
because I wanted to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Because it happens.
okay. You know
Yeah.
what? Go, let's go somewhere else. And she's like, no, 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 I really want to try this. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think it takes a lot of self restraint and self control to kind of, I wouldn't say attack someone in the moment, but just that need to be like, hey, see, I told you we should have went somewhere else. And it takes a lot of, like you say, grace and accountability on your part as a husband, as a leader, to just say, you know what, I probably shouldn't say anything. She probably feels bad already that she made a mistake. I'm just gonna let her run.
we had a conversation similar to that a couple of weeks ago, where for some reason my wife was feeling very uncomfortable with the way she had managed some situation, right? And
Hmm.
and I use my wife because she probably spends more time with the kids than I do. So
Hmm.
more than likely, when you average things out, she will make more mistakes with the kids than I do. I get to the happy part where everything is done. I get home now. Okay, let's go have dinner. Oh,
Right,
here,
right.
here comes on that.
Yeah, yeah,
And she already dealt with homework, with this, with that. Get your room ready. Everything that happens at home. So I get to be the one just providing the fun part, right?
right.
And she was feeling terrible. And I remember sharing this with her, and I said, you know what? We will make mistakes. I have made mistakes with them. I had made
Yeah.
some bad calls. At some given point, somehow every parent will traumatize their kid in some,
Hmm.
right? The idea is how can I traumatize them less?
Yeah. That's
So
true.
eventually we're all gonna make mistakes and that's gonna have an effect on children. But at the same time, there's a lot of good things that happen at home. There's a lot of things that we lead and kids are watching.
Hmm.
I don't know if I shared this story with you, but I was grocery shopping. I think I shared this with the group, general group at ReEngage. I was shopping for groceries and I got to the lemon section and I started choosing the lemons, and going through all the box and moving things around and picking the right ones. And then I hadn't noticed that behind me there was a man and a lady, and they were not together, but they were waiting for me to pick the lemons, right?
Right.
Then finally the man asked me, okay, I have to ask you, how do you know which ones to pick?
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't know they were looking. So it goes back to the same thing, influence. Some
Hmm.
I was looking, right?
Hmm.
And of course I had to explain to them, well, this is how I pick my lemons, right? And I told them. And they said, okay, great. Now I know how to do that, right? And kids are always listening. Kids are always watching. You're not always gonna react right. You're not always gonna do or say the right thing. But if you assume your leadership the way it's supposed to be and admit as leader, guys, I said something wrong today. Guys, you know what? I overreacted. Sometimes I have to apologize to my kids because sometimes I had a bad day at work. I get
Hmm.
home. I'm already frustrated. And then one of them said something and I just snap at him. No, and get after them.
Hmm.
And then later on, I realized, you know what? It was not my kid's fault.
Yeah.
It wasn't even what he did. It's more like what I was bringing home. And I have to say, you know what, son, I'm sorry. What you did was wrong, but
Yeah.
I overreacted to what you did. I was having a tough day, so I am so sorry. And usually the kids will say that I'm so sorry too. I shouldn't have done that. Sometimes apologizing first makes them realize, okay, what I did was wrong instead of just pointing it out and, you know,
Yeah.
get upset at them. So,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And like I was saying earlier, showing that you are accountable, it teaches the kids a lesson. I know some people that don't hug or kiss their spouse in front of their kids, and I was like, why? It's like, oh, I just don't want them to see that. I was I kiss my wife in front of my kids. Like, and for anybody who's listening, the next time you're with your wife, kiss her
yeah.
in front of your kids. And I want you to take a peek at your kids looking at you and see the look in their face. I know we talked about this and talked about this in ReEngage, but I remember one particular time I went over to my spouse and I gave her a hug. You know what my kids did? Both of them, they walked over and they joined.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And and I noticed that my kids are really compassionate. Not so much my youngest daughter, she's a little firecracker. But my son, who's 8 years old, he's really, really compassionate. I like to credit my wife for that because she does teach the kids like a lot of compassion, how to, talk to people. I would like to instill toughness in my kids. But as I get older, what I'm learning is like, you know, tough love without the love is just being tough. And I think, kids don't just need tough, they need tough love, but they need love also.
One of the things that I learned over the years is rules without relationship leads to rebellion.
Oh, say that one more time because I love it. I think that could be like a one-liner for everybody who's listening.
Rules without a relationship will lead to rebellion.
Mm,
You know,
I like it.
so the kids need to know that the rules that I have established at home are for their better good. So we
Hmm.
try not to say, be quiet. Why? Because I so, because I'm your mom, because I'm your dad. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, eventually they will be quiet, but they need to see the other side. They need to know, okay, my dad is asking me to be quiet because what I
Hmm.
said, it was inappropriate.
All
What
right.
what I'm saying at this moment is it's wrong.
All
So,
right.
and then we have this conversation with them at the time. What you mentioned during dinner time was very inappropriate. You have a 10-year old, you're making this joke, and it was not appropriate. For
Hmm.
anyone, not just a 10-year old, but when you talk about things like this, you're not allowing him to grow. You're pushing the growth faster than he's learning things that he shouldn't learn yet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, so when we establish that relationship and we have those conversations, we hear our kids. And
Hmm.
sometimes my I remember one time I told my oldest, I said, son, if you ever see me stepping out of line, I give you permission to tell me that you're out of line, right? And I know a lot of parents would never do that because it's prideful, because
Uh-huh.
pride will like, no, I'm not gonna let my kid tell me what I'm doing wrong. Sometimes it's necessary. And I
Yeah.
remember one time I did something out of line. I said something. My wife said something to me, and I took it the wrong way, and I responded aggressively. And when I did, my son said, Dad, hold on. This is one of those times that you told me to tell you, but I don't think mom meant it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel that you took it the wrong way. Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
And as a son, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
me. And I had to admit it, swallow my pride, because there's a relationship here.
Yeah.
I was going to get things right. Yet, even though most of the time it's me correcting them, when you allow that to happen and your kids can be honest with you and tell you that, sometimes you get upset too quickly, that sometimes you come with this attitude from work and you take it on us. And when you're able to listen to them, they feel respected at home. They feel loved. They feel they're cared for. And then
Yeah.
not just the minions at home, right? Doing the chores or whatever you ask them to do. So,
Yeah. I think I love that. So it says rules without relationship leads to
yeah,
yeah, I like that. That's a good way. And I know that nobody in your life holds you more accountable than your kids and your wife because they're the ones that are closest to you,
yeah,
right? They get to see like, you know, I went to a function with my wife the other day. It was her Christmas party. And I was saying to myself, I was like, she said something. And I'm not gonna say that it wasn't true, but I know it's not 100% her. And I was just like, I wonder how would they feel if they knew how she was, like, like at my wife's, like, so, and I think this goes for like a lot of marriages, but at your job, people probably get the best version of it. Like when you think about it, you
yeah.
know, you wake up in the morning time, you either exercise or drink some coffee, and you head to work, you're in a good mood and you're focused and you perform, but you go through stuff when you're at work. And when you come home, you're tired or you're stressed out, or, somebody gave you a mouthful and made you have a bad day. And it kind of ruins the rest of your day. And then you get home, and then that person that you're with, to include your wife and the person that you're around all the time, like your kids, they see you and they don't understand that you had a bad day for the most part, but you get the snappy version of it. You know what I mean? And I think that people in your life that are closest to you kind of hold you accountable. And I like that. I like that. Well, I tell you what, let's talk about, I want to talk about legacy. I heard someone say the other day they were 50 years old. The average age of a male in the United States is between 70 and 75 years old, right? That means that you have more good years behind you than you do ahead of you. And when you start thinking like that, you start thinking about legacy. Uh, as far as your legacy is concerned, what do you feel like your legacy, or what do you want your legacy to be to your kids, to your family, to your wife, once you leave this earth?
Something that we talked about this just yesterday. My kids were having a disagreement and they were being mean to each other. And I told them, guys, you guys are going to spend more time together. You're going to be siblings more time than you will be my kids. Eventually, one
Mhm.
is going to be gone and you guys are going to stay together. It's all
Yeah.
three of you. So I need you to start working on your relationship. Well, he annoys me when he does that. Okay, well, you need to tell him. And he needs to know not to tease you on that bothers you.
Mhm.
So I was explaining to them about having healthy relationships. And I understand their brother and sisters, and it's part of the fun,
Yeah.
that way. It's part of the fun of having siblings. To remember is family unity. Unfortunately, it's different for me. I grew up in a very different kind of environment, and I value that because I actually learned it from my wife's side of the family. They're
Mhm.
people that are always together. They call each other for any reason. Somebody goes through something, and everybody is on alert. Okay, what's going on? What can we help with? I was explaining that to them. I definitely would say my legacy will be number one. I always put God first,
Mhm.
and that faith will carry over to if you truly do what God tells you to do, you will honor your parents. You will treat your siblings the way God want you to treat them. And above all, just family unity for them to always remember that they have each other. Definitely will be that.
Nice, nice, nice. Well, as we wrap up, I have one last question, and usually my question is about like a leadership quote or a book that someone likes, but I kind of catered this question a little bit different. So, what if you could give someone one type of faith-based leadership advice? What would it be?
Be the initiator. True leaders don't need anybody to motivate them. You need to be the initiator. Don't wait for your wife to tell you, hey, let's pray. You'll start praying. Let your kids see you pray at night. Read your Bible at night. Let your kids see you reading your Bible. Not the Bible app, because they'll think that you're in the phone.
Right.
Make sure they see your actual Bible and be the initiator of anything. You know, I had this conversation with my son a couple of months ago when my wife asked him, hey, can you do this? And he did it, but he was in a bad mood. He was like complaining, oh, man, I get to do this. And I told him, son, if you're ever going to get married, you need to learn that I will always be uncomfortable so your mom can be comfortable.
Mm.
I'm not going to be sitting down while she's standing up. I said, I cannot do that. I said, as soon as she comes to the table, I'm going to get up and pull her chair out. As it is, she sits last because she's serving everybody dinner, right? So that I need
Right.
to make sure that if I don't wait for her to pour her drink, I always pour her drink. If she's running out, I get the drink, whatever we're drinking, and pour it again. If I need to get more water, I just get up and I don't need to. I'm not waiting for her to ask me, can you do this for me?
Yeah.
So I need to be the initiator, and definitely will be a faith-based, be the initiator. Don't wait for your kid to say that somebody invited me to church. You'll be the one that takes them to church. You'll be the one that leads with prayer. You'll be the one that leads with the word. So that definitely will be that. And I know
Nice.
if my wife, if I could ask her, what would you want me to do more of? She would tell me, I want you to be
A leader.
a leader.
Initiate.
Yes.
I like it. I like it. Well, I appreciate it, man. You have dropped some knowledge, some dime to the people that's listening and to myself. I take something from each podcast. And I do appreciate you being a guest. Hopefully we get a chance to see each other soon. Me, you, Claudia, and Marina, hang out, do some dinner or something like
Of
that.
course.
And most sure, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on our podcast and have a good one.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
All right.
All right.